Hello all, Rick here with a video looking into the life and lore of the Chief Medical Officer of the Enterprise, well, one of them anyway, Dr. Katherine Pulaski. This personnel file will be looking into primarily the canon of the shows, then adding the apocryphal entries where it does not contradict. Now, there are some details that, even with this added lore, are undisclosed, mostly centred around her personal life. She's been married 3 times by her appearance on the Enterprise in 2365 and divorced all 3, while the books go on to state she has 3 children. But the dates of her marriages are up in the air, with sources giving different names at different times. Nevertheless, I hope you'll be interested to know her potential fate after the Enterprise too, so let's take a look. Born in Krakow, Poland in 2318, she had 1 sibling and her parents were Sabina and Georgios Pulaski. As she grew, she decided rather quickly that she had an interest in medicine, but would not enroll in Starfleet Medical. In fact, like several physicians before her, notably Leonard McCoy, she would accrue most of her medical knowledge from outside of the Starfleet framework. In 2335, she began her medical internship on the planet Shakafar, where she also learned that she had a phobia of transporters. Probably because on every analytical level they're lethal, even though apparently they are not. In her final year, she and Trill scientist Morita Tunge worked on a project that sought to create care strategies for species from 5 different alien species groups. They won several prizes for their work, and this set her up as a notable scientist moving forwards. After this, she moved back to Earth to study medicine at Stony Brook University Medical School. In 2343 she graduated with her specialty in genetic statistical modelling. In this time she was operating as a civilian doctor and researcher outside of Starfleet around Federation worlds. In 2347 she was offered a Starfleet commission at the rank of Lieutenant Commander. While it's unclear the cause of this offer, this was during the escalation of the Cardassian Federation border wars. So it's probable that Starfleet was increasing recruitment, especially in the medical fields, to help with this crisis. It's not uncommon for Starfleet to recruit from beyond its own tutelage, especially in scientific fields. In 2348, she was assigned to the USS Renegade NCC 61302. During her time in Starfleet, she wrote a text on linear models of viral propagation, which went on to be considered required reading on the subject. She also developed extensive knowledge of surgical techniques on body replacement surgeries, completing at least 2 ocular implant operations and several internal implant operations. With the border wars underway, it's pretty grim to assume how she became so familiar with these procedures. By 2353, she had been married 3 times and divorced each husband, retaining her surname throughout. She did have 3 children by this time too, and one of these partners was a Bajoran man called Kelek Ton, and one of her children was named Jackie Pulaski. From 2353 to 55, she was assigned to Starfleet Medical on Earth, where she treated patients from a Tholian attack on Starbase 311. Here she met Kyle Riker and almost married him, however the 2 parted ways after just over a year. In 2358, Pulaski was promoted to Commander in rank and assigned to be the Chief Medical Officer of the USS Repulse NCC 2544 under Captain Taggart, where she would serve for the next 6 years. In late 2365, Beverly Crusher of the USS Enterprise NCC 1701D accepted the position as head of Starfleet Medical, and left a vacancy as the CMO of the flagship of the Federation. The offer came to Pulaski to take over, and while Captain Taggart tried to get her to stay on the Repulse with an offer of a personal shuttlecraft, the opportunity was too great to ignore. In 2365, she became the Chief Medical Officer of the USS Enterprise D under Captain Jean-Luc Picard. However, thanks to her career choices beforehand, and disinterest in the running of a starship, she was not considered a bridge officer, although her role in the senior staff suited her just fine. During her time here, she was prematurely aged by the modified antibodies of Gagarin 4 Station, with the process being reversed by a transporter treatment. She also saved Captain Picard's life with a cardiac implant replacement after he initially refused the surgery aboard the Enterprise. After Beverly Crusher stepped away from her role after a year, She put in a request to return to the Enterprise, and Pulaski stepped aside. One of her first assignments after this was in 2366, when she visited Terak Nor under Gul Dukat's rule to address a plague there. This illness turned out to be the double helix virus, where she also met Kira Nerys. After this, she returned to Earth to lecture at Starfleet Academy as a guest speaker before Captain Taggart's daughter, Ariel Taggart, asked for Pulaski to return to the USS Repulse NCC 2544, which she had just come into the command of. In 2366, she accepted the position once more. In 2368, the Repulse treated the injured from a Borg attack when a second Doomsday machine was discovered, and this brought her into meeting the Enterprise crew once more. In 2369, she transferred to the USS DeBakey as Chief Surgeon, where she met Reginald Barclay, who was on temporary assignment to treat an outbreak of a virulent pathogen on Cygnus 4. Later that year, she was reassigned to the USS Progress NCC 34544 under Captain David Gold as the Chief Medical Officer there, as it completed a transport mission to Dremor Station. This was more than just a transport trip, as several other stops and missions were en route. When it arrived at Dremor, she assumed the role as the station's Chief Medical Officer. By early 2372, she had returned to the USS Repulse NCC 2544 and resumed her role as the CMO there again. However, after this tenure, she would leave the Repulse for the last time as she returned to Earth. In 2372, she became involved with the Marquis after they created a viral weapon, and her own daughter Jackie was involved and also became infected. She risks her career to find the Marquis and develop a cure based on their research. In 2376, she transfers away from surgical roles and moves into research, taking a position at the Phlox Institute as the lead researcher there, managing her own team and experiments. In 2379, Beverly Crusher was once again stepping aside from her role on the Enterprise, NCC 1701E, to take up position as Chief of Starfleet Medical once again, and Picard offered Pulaski the vacancy aboard the Enterprise. However, Katherine declined, saying that her days of Starship-side medicine were behind her, and she was content with her research position. In 2385, she faced some trouble, however, when visiting a Bajoran medical conference, and took part in creating a cure alongside Dr. Julian Bashir for the Andorian reproductive crisis, using genetics research illegally acquired by Bashir. She was arrested for her part, until the reveal of a conspiracy resulted in her being pardoned. Subsequently, she was granted a commendation for her role. Later that year, she lobbied the Rosalind Franklin Institute to undertake a multicultural mission of medical science and exploration. Successful, she was given the USS Athene Donald, where she was able to assemble a crew of Ferengi, Klingon, Cardassian, Romulan, Zenkethi people. The ultimate goal was to forego diplomatic divisions and focus on science and medicine. The captain was her old friend, Marita Tange. In terms of her hobbies, we see that she was willing to engage in the exploration of other people's cultures and expressed a personal intrigue into Klingon traditions. She had an extensive distrust of certain technology, from the transporter to automation. This extended to being dismissive of Lieutenant Commander Data, unable to perceive him as actually sentient. Which was a bias she eventually overcame, but it did little to ingratiate her with his peers. This mistrust extended into her medical practices, but not at the expense of viable treatments. She would not forego an advanced treatment simply because she didn't trust it or something, but she did appreciate older practical treatments too for lesser injuries. It's a noted quirk that her distrust of tech did not extend to medical science. She retained a dry wit and acerbic attitudes to many things, but considered the preservation and quality of life to be paramount. Anything that came in the way of this was worthy of her scorn, and she was quick to pass judgment, which often brought her into conflict with figures like Captain Picard. Although her views softened somewhat, as we see in her later actions, it seems that she retained this judgmental attitude towards any perceived roadblock. During her time aboard the Enterprise, she protested the Prime Directive, and in later stories, she took matters into her own hands to cure her daughter, working with ill-gotten research to formulate a cure even though it risked her career with Bashir, then finally forming a crew from scientists and doctors of multiple antagonistic species because science does not discriminate, diplomacy be damned. Cut from the same cloth as characters like McCoy, she and he share many similarities in their history, as both formed their medical professionalism and attitude outside of the confines of Starfleet Command. The differences arise in the fact that over time it becomes clear that Pulaski, although an exceptional surgeon, among the best in the fleet, preferred research roles in her later life over the work aboard starships. While her initial introduction would see her butt heads with the Enterprise crew, you can say that much of this comes down from her not being a part of Starfleet from day one, where she developed her own opinions outside of those predominantly shown among the crew. However, she eventually came to address her faults, and likewise the crew softened to her perceived harshness in some matters. In a different timeline, perhaps she would have remained on the vessel, but as we routinely see her return to the USS Repulse, it's more likely that just as the Enterprise felt like home to Riker or Crusher, Pulaski had her own little corner of the universe already cut out for her, that being the sickbay and labs of the Repulse, a place she routinely went back to between other assignments. And that's a nice image, I think, that while the grand flagship of the Federation is a mighty achievement of a posting, every ship out there is the comfort zone of some other officer. In terms of my 3 Pulaski picks, I'm going to go with Pen Pals, and while a data-centric episode, her actions in this part showcase her attitude towards anything that gets in the way of saving lives regardless of other moral concerns. The Icarus Factor has a lot of her backstory added in with Kyle Riker, and then up the long ladder to witness the more compassionate and empathetic side of her that was there, buried under all the grumbles. Thanks for watching this breakdown on the career of Katherine Pulaski. She's a character that brought a different angle to the Enterprise in her brief time there, and for that alone, I think she remains a strong and needed character. Thanks again. I've been Rick, and until the next one, goodbye.